response video to Holiday. Still gnarling about to me, value being a personal thing rather than an absolute thing. So he played a clip of mine and read a quote from my video, which seems rather redundant. But anyway, so the question to which I focused, now this is a really difficult question. Can it be said that there exists, as claimed by Inmendham, such a concept of universally applicable value? Again, it's not the word I said or the wording I've used, but okay, which may be termed also intrinsic value exists. I don't know, just to say, to even say it's value, it's real value, and it exists when sentience. There's always value when a sentient is feeling. It can never be irrelevant. You can never spread it like frosting all over the place, willy-nilly. You know, at least the negative states of being. You could never look at it as something harmless. I claim not. As such, I suggest that this is a point of contention, the question at issue for most of his interlocutors. Fine. Let's see where we go from there. Oh, yeah, the little thing doesn't work, which is annoying. So I have to do it this way. Will Inmendham defend? Question mark. Do you, Inmendham, admit that the concept of intrinsic value is of fundamental importance to your philosophy? I would contend that yes, like a photon is important to physics, the idea of value, the fact that value is generated by sentient beings having conscious states of qualitative character, yes, is fundamental to my philosophy. If there were no relevant or meaningful value states, if it didn't matter whether things suffered, then yes, I wouldn't bother doing philosophy. It would be a waste of time. Do you accept that no notions of efficiency, productivity, or estimations of the worth or purpose of life have any meaning without this concept? Yes, without the fact that we have conscious states of value in terms of qualitatively different states of comfort, discomfort, and comfort. Pain, comfort, suffering, comfort, discomfort. The fact that those two things, those contrasting things exist, yes, creates all the potential for there to be any meaning in the universe. Oh, here we go. For me, it's quite obvious that you have these positive and negative feelings. Okay, that's a quote from me. If we say to you, these feelings are intrinsically positive and negative. Again, it's redundant. The fact that individuals have the feelings is meaningless. It's like saying individual gold mines produce gold, and so the gold only has value to the individual mine from which it came from or something. So it just doesn't matter who's laying the golden eggs. It doesn't. This two thing is a philosophical question. The meaning is understood in context, in the context of understanding significance, and that's in a bigger, broader sense than just experiencing. It's an evaluation of the experience. The meaning is revealed in the evaluation of the experience. You don't see a tree's roots by looking at a tree, but you can know they're there. And that's the experience may be a tree, but the meaning is in the roots that you can understand. Can we say that what we mean by this is that there is an innate tendency to want or need, well, want and need are not really part of the subject. The subject is torture bad, always. Or feel compelled to move away from one state to another by sentient experience said feelings. Feel compelled. So this is, again, you're trying to talk about what a reaction to a feeling should be rather than the feeling. You can't run away from cancer therapy. Your compulsion to run out of the hospital probably would do you no good anyway. You're just going to have to endure the unpleasantness of the treatment or the therapy. There's no running away, there's no getting away, there's none of that, and the experience is going to be unpleasant, not good, torturous, tormenting, and that's a fact. It's not subject to this getting away shit. Is this a sense in which we can describe our feelings as being personally important? No. They're not important because they make me want to run away. They're important because they're bad. They're awful. They're nasty. They're horrible. They're bad feelings. Shit. It's not the reaction part is just not relevant to the badness part. Alright, well, circling stuff isn't going to help much. Okay, here we are. And the negative feeling can be torturous and awful. You would pay very much money to avoid them. Just thrown in there to point out that we all have this common perception that if we could evade or avoid serious pains and sufferings or diseases, that we would pay some money to do that. If you could get a cancer diagnosis and buy your way out of it, you would go try to find the money. Do you understand? Do I understand you correctly in that this next descriptive sentence is intended to point to the idea of extreme compulsion? See, again, extreme compulsion that can be generated. Again, you want to keep saying that the compulsion is the subject of my video. That the idea that you want to run away is what I'm saying is bad about pain. What I'm saying is bad about pain is that it's awful, it's horrible, it's nasty, it's negative, it's bad, it's terrible, it's putrid, it's stinking, it's rotten, it's cruddy. Take every negative word ever described through English language and shove it over to that side, and that's what it is. It's not about my compulsion to run away. And that exists a possible rough or precise scaling of preference in the realm of all existent states. And that exists a possible rough or precise scaling of preference. Look, the fact that there's gradations to feelings and people's sensitivities, some people, I've used this example before, I don't really mind needles at all. You can stick needles in me all day and I'm fine with that. But they really bother some people, so it's an added problem. I mean, there's added suffering to the unpleasantness of the needle because they don't like it. It's an unpleasant rub. So yeah, we can all be rubbed in places where we're sensitive and it just doesn't work for us, but it does work for somebody else. So yeah, there is some rough. There is some variance, but I'm just saying for the sake of argument, we do have words we do understand commonly. We all know what chemotherapy is, we all know what certain things are, and we all know it would suck. So let's not play a game. Alright. They are of definite value not just to me. It is my claim there is value is universal and absolute. So that's my quote. In this compound sentence, would you concede that the part they are definite value not just to me implies that the sentient can in fact undertake a reasoned personal evaluation? Well, again, you're going to keep saying it's a personal evaluation. I'm saying that the judgment is just a logical evaluation. Now, you want to keep calling it a personal evaluation, I just think that's nonsense. If I was to clone myself, let's say I could make a perfect clone that was exactly like me, same personality, same education, same everything. I could just copy myself. What personal evaluation would I be doing when I was thinking of its interest? When I would be clearly aware of the fact that, oh wow, that's basically me over there, and I better be, whatever I do, I better make sure it doesn't hurt him, because him is me. I mean, that knowledge is all that needs to exist. The evaluation is just that simple. The compound part of my point is that effectively, for all intrinsic purposes and all substantive, meaningful purposes, we are clones of each other. The distinctions are irrelevant in terms of feelings and the fact that we have a welfare stake in not suffering. Suffering is the enemy, not the people who suffer, the suffering. In fact, the positive and negative feelings, I think I did, implies that a sentient can in fact undertake a reasoned personal evaluation. Well, again, if it's a reasoned evaluation, this word personal just doesn't need to exist. Reasoned evaluation is all we're after. If at this stage, retaining this sense of meaning of the word value, I was to say these feelings had intrinsic value, this would again point to the compulsion to move out of one feeling state and into another intrinsically without needing time to think or reason. So again, he's talking about reactions to the bad feelings instead of just acknowledging the reason why there is a need for a reaction is the feelings are bad. It's not, the problem with torture isn't that it makes you want to run away from torture. The problem with torture is the torture. Ugh, fuck. No, nothing. There we go. Change. They are of definite value, not just to me. It is my claim that the value is universal, absolute. I think I said and absolute, but it doesn't matter. So to just understand, I'm just saying that the who's having them is irrelevant. The feelings are the thing that matter. If I use the example of making clones of myself, the logic or the illogic of putting my own clone in chains and enslaving him to me, and having him whipped and fed crappy food and shivering in the cold, logically there'd be no way to escape the truth that, oh, I'm essentially doing that to myself. And that I might as well be the one in the slave quarters and he might as well be the one here. And that's just nonsensical and idiotic. There's no value gained because the obvious compromise of your own welfare, even though it's a clone, it is your own welfare, logically. You can't escape that logic. Let's see. Hopefully it's been a value scale. Hopefully we can agree that sentients are capable of having personal value scales that reflect the degree which they feel compelled to move to preferential feeling states. Well, again, yeah, we can agree that there's some variation in our sensibilities. Some people like certain kinds of food, some people don't. Some things are really irritating, some sounds to some people, some sounds aren't. I'm just saying, generally speaking, the idea that things will create sensations in you that will be absolutely horrible, and things will create sensations in you that will be very comforting, that truth retains a truth. The idea that they fall into these categories of good feelings and bad feelings doesn't change because different things make us feel good feelings or bad feelings. So again, it's about the feeling, not about what caused the feeling. Value is universal, absolute. Well, that's really cutting the sentence down. Their value is universal. The value of the sentient experience. To cut that sentence like that is to distort it. Be compared and contrasted to the former personal meaning of a personal valuation. Again, yeah, and my comparison and contrast is to say that's just absolutely nonsense, okay? The value is in the feeling, and the feeling's value is universal and absolute in the sense that its meaning is not just meaningful to the person having the experience, it is meaningful as an event in the universe. Again, if my cloned copy is a slave getting whipped, the meaning of that suffering is you can't separate it from the beneficiary of the suffering, and you can't separate it from a diminishment of the sensibility of the overall equation gets destroyed in the sense that now I might as well be torturing myself, which would be illogical. definite value, not just to maybe claim universal. That's the same quote. When you say a sentient's feelings have a value that is universal, I understand this, that you mean its valuation is applicable to every sentience. Its valuation. When you say that a sentient feelings, when you say a sentient's feelings have a value that is universal, I understand this, that you mean its valuation is applicable to every sentience. No. The person's, my personal philosophical opinions do not apply to other people automatically. They only apply if they have some sort of logical integrity, if they're right. So some personal person's valuation of their experience doesn't mean too much. The question is the feeling itself is what means something. In what way are a sentient's personal feelings applicable to the entire category of sentience? Well, again, it's not applicable to the category. There's two processes here. I don't know. I don't know how through all these videos this has escaped you, but I've said it more than one time. The feeling mechanism and the thinking mechanism are not the same thing. What you think about feelings is different than feelings themselves. Alright? Again, this is understanding the tree more for what's under the ground, for what you can't feel. You're not going to feel the roots. You're going to understand they're there. That's more what's being said here, is that it's a logical imperative. It's a rational recognition of significance. Significance isn't something it wears as a material sign. Things that are significant don't say, I am significant on them. You have to see it with a thought. You can't see it magically through your fingers. In what way does the readily apparent personal importance of a sentient's feelings extend beyond its own self? In the rational categorization way. Once again, logically, if I had a clone, it would be obvious, illogic to think I could win by torturing my clone to gain some profit. If I sold my clone into slavery, thinking that somehow I'm going to profit from the experience, that would be fallacy. It would be nonsense. It would be illogical. I'm making the logical statement that for the sake of value, for the sake of sentient experience, other humans, although very different than me, might as well be clones of me. The basic mechanism, feeling, is the same. And I'm making the third argument that, yes, for most mammal life, this is a truth. Their emotional life is very rich, and rationally I can't find enough distinction to be worth degrading the importance of their welfare. In what ways does readily apparent personal importance of sentient feelings extend beyond its own self? So again, the way is logically. Logically recognizing that whose feeling isn't relevant. What is being felt is relevant. If I made 2 clones, maybe I need to make 10 clones, and you'll understand that if I sold 10 clones into hard, brutal slavery for my profit, that would be fundamentally illogical. How is it universally important? Again, it's universally meaningful. The understanding of its importance is accessible. How else to put that? It's universal in the sense that it's absolute. So, sometimes these words, I did use the word absolute, and you're just kind of not using the word absolute. So just forget the word universal and just make it absolute. The value is real, and it exists. There's no way to unravel it or take it away or to rationalize it away. There's no logic where you can escape the fact that if I sold my 10 clones into slavery, I just did something really dumb. Should be a change here. Okay. So let's see if this one I missed. This thing isn't working all that good. They are of definite value, not just to me. When you say sentient feelings have absolute value, I assume you mean opposed to any relative scaling that might be subjectively done by a particular sentience. I'm saying that everybody has an ability to do scaling. I'm just saying that the scaling has to be logic based. It has to have a rational continuity. It has to be coherent to the known categories, and so yeah, you have to be able to explain, justify. This being the case, can you please explain how we can gain knowledge of this absolute scale? Well, again, the scale isn't what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that we know the scale of bad and good. That scale we don't need to worry too much about. We know that there's a ton of stuff that falls into the category of commonly understood as bad, and that's all I need to worry about. Okay, I don't want to worry about the 10% of human experiences you want to play games with. Let's just talk about the 90% that are the substance of the humans problem. And then I could talk about the 99.9999% of the bigger problem, which is the sentient organisms that aren't human. But anyway. Alright, they are of definite value, not just to me, but to my claim that the value is absolute. Okay, here again, how do we move from a personal value scale of feelings, which each of us subjectively, intrinsically knows, to a universal absolute scale of applicable to all sentience? Well, again, you're saying applicable to all sentience. You don't have to be sentient to understand. I'm just saying it's a huge benefit to have sentience to understand. But when I'm understanding somebody else's pain, when I'm looking at it or watching it, I don't really have to have a sentient experience, okay? I am having a thinking experience. I'm understanding the context of the circumstance, okay? So everything I see on TV, I mean, people watch horror movies, they watch all kinds of horrible stuff, and they have plausible deniability in the sense that they know it's a fantasy or they know it's not happening to them, so they don't get viscerally involved in any kind of negative ways and just, whatever, do some psychological therapy while they watch, I suppose. But regardless, my point is they're not having a sentient experience. They're having a thought experience. And thoughts are different than feelings. Understanding something is different than feeling something. So obviously we generate feelings being conscious, and we can understand what they mean being intelligent. The two things are different. Cannot be ignored. Okay, here. Alright, the feelings cannot be ignored by an intelligence. When you say cannot be ignored, do you mean an intelligence is not able to ignore it? Yeah, I'm saying logic again. So again, what can I say? You want to play with words? Play with words. When I'm saying the word cannot be ignored by an intelligence, I don't mean an intelligence that knows how to crack safes. I'm talking about a logically coherent, well-informed entity. Alright, so it doesn't have any fallacies or wrong beliefs. It's well-educated, well-knowledgeable, and it has personal hands-on experience. And what I'm saying is that it can't logically ignore sentience. It can't logically come up with an excuse to say it's okay to let something suffer for no reason. So if it saw something suffering for no good reason, there would be a logical imperative to act, because it knows it would want something to act if it was in that position. If so, what prevents it from ignoring it? I'm saying rationality, logic. There's no logically sensible way to think something else is more important. So I mean, unless you're doing heart surgery, on somebody, you really don't have an excuse not to run over the cat or some other kind of thing. If that's, what I'm saying. Whatever you're doing It has to be preventing some other greater harm, or you just can't justify ignoring something that you can fix where some sentience being tortured. When you say cannot be ignored, do you mean will not ignore it? Well, I'm saying will not ignore it if it's doing logic. If it's doing sensible, rational logic, it will do what is required. It'll make an evaluation of how bad the suffering is, whether it's a risk to itself. All these things are going to be part of the evaluation. But if all it has to do is press an orange button and the suffering stops, well, yeah, it's going to press the orange button if it's intelligent. When you say cannot be ignored, do you mean an intelligent ought not to ignore it? Yeah, well, whatever, fine. I'm saying that the logic will say there's an imperative. It'll say suffering's happening, suffering's important, you ought to do something about it. I mean, maybe there's somebody else right there and they're going to take care of it, and so you can rationalize and say, well, somebody else has already got that taken care of. Alright? That might be okay logically. But I'm just saying that the logic is you can't ignore it. That's the statement. You can't just say it doesn't mean anything. I'm just going to keep whatever, putting frosting on the mountains of the moon. When you say cannot be ignored, do you mean all or some of the above is true by virtue of how you would define universal value? Do you mean all or some of the above is true by virtue of how you would define universal value? No, well, I've already said what I've said about all of the above. The above doesn't use the word logic, and I'm saying there's a logical imperative, and there's no rational, there can be no rational composition, no sentences or paragraphs that could be rationally written to justify ignoring a sentience in distress. Just can't be done logically. Alright, an intelligent being could not ignore the fact that when something is feeling, when I'm feeling, it is a significant event in the universe. So I was using the example of feeling badly, or torture, that kind of thing was the context of this statement. Is it fair to say this is, do I understand you correctly here in using the word significant? You mean or allude to its importance by way of its defined intrinsic value. Its importance by way of its defined intrinsic value. Alright, yes. What I'm feeling is a significant event in the universe. Yes, whenever an intelligent being sees a feeling thing in distress, it's going to know something significant is happening. Yes. Because it knows the feeling is significant. Because it's tasted it, it knows what it is. It knows the feeling is bad. So he's calling this circular reasoning because he's saying I'm begging the question because I don't have a right to make a conclusion out of a premise. And but he doesn't articulate that in any particular way that I can see. And so I say pshaw to that accusation. So we'll play the ending here. I haven't listened to this ending. But I mean, this is just a bullshit. I mean, I can't make it any clearer. I'm saying personal experience enlightened me to the fact that a tree has roots. Okay, and so now I go into the world and I know every time I see a tree that it has roots. So yeah, I have feelings. I logically know that the other humans evolved the same way I did. They have feelings. My feelings are important, damn important. Their feelings must be also damn important, no doubt about it. The badness and the goodness is a quality of them. Okay, it's universal quality, good and bad. I just have to put the feelings in a category and then do the math. This isn't complicated. And the third element, again, is back to the reality check, which is, yes, if you take evolution seriously, all the mammals are having quite significant sensual experiences, and there's lots of value being exchanged out there in the real world, and it's at a rate that is preposterously inefficient. The deficit spending is grotesque.
Stated in different words. Clearly, to use any argument in which the conclusion is one of the premises is to reason in a circle. Reasoning from the premises to the conclusion brings you back to where you started.
Yeah, well, whatever. I don't need this. This is a trivial lecture. I don't think my conclusion is that value exists, and I prove it by saying value exists. No, I'm saying I've personally tasted it. You're not going to convince me that my personal feelings are of no significance. You may attempt to say, I have a theory that everything you feel is just, it's just digits, it's just photons moving, and therefore you can't possibly be having a bad experience because a photon can't have a bad experience, it's just a photon. You can make up some kind of crap like that and say, okay, I'm going to say that consciousness has no meaning. Well, go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say that my consciousness is the same as this computer screen or the computer down here, that my consciousness is just doing robotic things. Yes, it's doing mechanical things, but obviously, from personal experience, there's something happening. Alright, there's something real in this value creation that this computer did. This computer created value, okay, by trying to synthesize value. It needed value to create a motivating mechanism, and instead of making synthetic value, it made the real fucking thing. So real value exists in the universe because a thinking machine needed value to create motivation. And so ironically, that's the byproduct of it. It's the byproduct of a stupid, dumb computer that had no meaning, and it gave meaning in the universe by trying to synthesize value, and it synthesized the real thing. So anyway, but you know, I've already made these arguments, and this is just, like I said, you know, shove that kind of shit up your ass. You know, making the point that I personally am experiencing consciousness, and I think it's fucking significant, is not the same as me saying, as the conclusion, which is there's a value economy in the universe, and that we have to account for the suffering we cause in other animals and in other people. That their suffering is the same as our own suffering, and that is the only rational perspective to have. If its suffering isn't meaningful to me, the suffering in somebody else must be meaningful. I have no logical way to escape that simple fact. So again, if you're going to try to tell me I'm not feeling, my feelings don't matter, I'm going to say, you have no fucking chance in hell, fucker. Okay, you can talk your shit all you fucking want to talk your shit. You're not going to convince me that it doesn't matter whether I have a nail in my eye or a yummy cupcake. That those two experiences are equal. There is no difference. The universe could have a zillion, gazillion, gazillion Garys with a nail being pushed in and out of its eye, and it wouldn't mean a thing. You're not going to convince me of that. So your argument is fail. And that premise is not the same as my conclusion, which is value exists. So, fuck you. Well, fuck you for this. I mean, this was just patronizing puke. Yeah, so fuck you for that. Your fucking accusations. I accuse you of grotesque rationalizations. A deliberate effort to evade the truth. Yeah. Till next time.